is, understands the how-tos, and certainly she'll talk about some of those, but our colleagues in ITS are running Zoom, will be running Zoom workshops, are running Zoom workshops, specifically on the kinds of questions like Joelle said. Is there any way to change how many people you can see on a screen? That's the kind of question that they can answer. And just a commercial for them on August 4th, they'll be doing a full day of all sorts of tech workshops. So you might want to put that in your calendar. I don't think their full calendar is out yet, but I'm sure it'll be widely distributed. So let me introduce you to Kelly Ball. Kelly will be leading our workshop today. Kelly is one of our instructional designers. She works specifically with URI Online and with faculty that are designing online courses for URI Online. Those are mostly asynchronous courses, but she has a tremendous amount of experience with Zoom. We'd like you to use the chat for questions, and those questions are going to be monitored by me, but more specifically by Andrea Monroe, who's another one of our instructional designers for URI Online. So we'll try to, Andrea and will feel free to interrupt Kelly if there's some clarifications and things. And she kind of knows where we're going. So if there's questions you ask that we know we're getting to, she may just let them lie there until we get to the end of the presentation. So I'm going to mute myself and I'm going to turn it over to Kelly and let her take you into the world of Zoom.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. At least it's morning for me. I'm in California. So today, as Diane mentioned, we're going to get into Zoom. I saw someone just post in the chat that about the dinging. You can actually adjust that and have the ding turned off every time someone jumps in. So don't worry about that. But we have a very large training today. So yeah, if you could mute your mics for now and type in the chat pod. If you have a long question and maybe it makes more sense to unmute your mic, feel free to do so, but chat pod might be the best route for the size of the participant list today. So let's just jump in, and I've already started recording the session, Diane. So I'm going to go ahead and share my my screen. I created a presentation here for everyone. So you should see the background. Is everyone good? Okay, see it? Yes. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and present. So today we are going over using Zoom for engaging pedagogy. So we're going to highlight the different pedagogical aspects of Zoom and how you can really introduce and engage your students. We're going to go over some of the basic details of Zoom. As Diane mentioned, we're not going to get into the nitty-gritty of it, just the features and how we can best use them in our online class. Using and going over and then getting into testing out and demoing the different features. And then as we go through the presentation, if you have any ideas or wanting to know how to adjust things for your Zoom classroom, feel free to shout that out in the chat pod. So now we're going to go over the pedagogical aspects. So Zoom, as we all know, it's a synchronous online meeting space. So we can meet with our students in real time, all together in one spot, really get them engaging with content, with one another, kind of just have a space for them to meet and interact, engage, create that online community that they're missing with not being able to see each other in person in the classroom. And it does have accessibility for all participants. The Zoom link on accessibility has great information, but does have closed captioning, keyboard accessibility, automatic transcripts, which I'll get into in a little bit with the recordings, section, and then screen reader support. So some of the main tools and features within Zoom to really engage the learners are the chat pod. Especially if you have a large class like we have today, the chat pod is an essential tool that you have to be able to rely on and use when the students aren't able to speak. So having them be able to type in the chat pod, share files in the chat pod has been so helpful. And it's a lot more intuitive and dynamic than WebEx, as you may have seen. There's also a screen annotation tools with a whiteboard and annotation on different things on the screen. That's unlike what you were able to do with WebEx. So that's really helpful. There's polling options and nonverbal feedback. So with there's those reactions, and in the participant list, you can have those basic yes, no, slow down, speed up, that type of thing. And like I mentioned with the chat pod, there's file sharing. So you don't have to go outside. You don't have to go into Brightspace. You don't have to go into email to share a file with the students if you want them to look at something right in your Zoom classroom. So that's going to be really helpful to have real-time interactions. And then lastly, one of the highlight of Zoom are the breakout rooms. So you can have the students break out into smaller groups, especially of larger classes. And the instructor can jump from room to room. They can discuss more in detail the topics that you want them to discuss, and then come back together and have a bigger class discussion of what they spoke about within their
I need to know this, so learn it. Okay.
So now we're going to get engaging learners. Does anyone have any questions? I know I see a lot of activity in the chat pod. Are we good to move on? Okay.
Kelly, my apologies. I accidentally just muted you.
No problem.
There is a feature as the admin when you're having a large group like this that you can mute all participants, but if you are a co-host, just be aware you will actually mute the host. So sorry about that, Kelly.
That's all right. Okay, so we're going to get back into the engaging learners. This might be the better way to go, so I'm not in full screen and kind of can go back and forth. Getting into that pedagogy, engaging the learners. So we want to building that online community, especially if you're not in the classroom right now, is super important. You want the students to be active participants, really take responsibility for their learning experience. So get them engaged, get them being active, ask questions, get them, don't just have them sit and listen to you lecturing, get them active. The Zoom classroom will help engage the different learning modalities. We all learn in different ways. And so appealing to those different learners, so those who are more visual or like the hands-on, get them clicking around, have information they can see and really dive into rather than just some words on a page, or having some videos so it's auditory and visual. So really taking that into account and appealing to all learners in your class. Zoom also allows for really getting students to share their own ideas and perspectives along with the discussion board, which is not synchronous, but it does allow for that in-depth sharing of ideas. In the Zoom room, you can have real-time discussions, gain new perspectives, really let the students shine and engage with their students on a higher level. So by doing that, you can have discussions, you can have debates, you can have study groups, you can allow them to have presentations of a project they work on themselves, in their own time and then bring that to their Zoom classroom. So you have lots of possibilities of how you can get the students to come into their synchronous session in Zoom and really share their own perspective. So now we know that our students have certain needs. They learn in certain ways. As a student, they need things from you as the instructor to really thrive and succeed in a class. So we want to make sure that the class is learner-centered, having the students be responsible and engaging in the classroom, not just being someone in the background. We want to use technology to really enhance and the class environment, not just to use technology for technology's sake. So really emphasizing and bringing out the best aspects of the tools and using them as they benefit your class and how you've designed it. Oh, yes, I can definitely do that. I'm sorry. Is that better? There we go. So combining that synchronous and asynchronous time with the students is really helpful, because we can't spend all this time and hours in Zoom, because that's not the best time for you or the students and learning and sharing information. So really making the best use of your time and the tools that are available. And then the purpose. The students really need to understand why they're doing something, having some background, what are some maybe key takeaways. So having all of that come together and then using Zoom to fulfill those needs. So having those breakout rooms, getting them to be really diving into material, to the resources, applying real life experiences and their own ideas and, you know, what they've their own perspectives on the topics to really demonstrate their understanding and learn from one another. One great thing about Zoom is that everyone has an account, including students. So students can have easily the group sessions and don't have to rely on the instructor to create those sessions. So you can require the students to participate in online group sessions. Have them, if they have to meet, you can have them record the sessions either and share the file or the link with you. So you're holding them accountable that they've covered everything that they've needed to cover and still allowing them to participate without the instructor there. Okay, so now we're going to get into some of the important ways to engage and tips to think about when engaging the students. But before we do that, does anyone have any questions or need anything before I move on to that? I think we're good. Okay, nothing's popping up, so I think we're good to move on. So taking attendance, there's a few ways that you can take attendance. So the chat pod, it's right in your Zoom room. It's one of the easiest ways to have the students come in, check in with them, with you, the instructor, a way to get them really engaged and to make sure that they're participating is that you can have say a PowerPoint screen up and being shared as the students enter the room, has a question on it that they can answer in the chat pod or verbally if you prefer. And then you can do the same thing as they exit your Zoom classroom. Because sometimes, you know, students come on and they completely check out, or they physically leave the class and just stay logged on. So one way you can combat that is to require them to answer questions or do something to demonstrate that they're still in front of their computer and checking in and really there and being active participants. So yeah, you can have them do those things in the chat pod. There are options in your Zoom account that you can also check the participant list, who was in there, how long they were in there. Unfortunately, you can't tell if they're actually sitting in front of their computer, especially if you don't have the webcams on. But depending upon the topic and what's being discussed, you may require them to have their webcams on, but that's really dependent upon you, your class, and the students and how they're feeling about the topic. Recording is the same way. You kind of have to play that by ear and what's being discussed. And so, you know, all of this together helps build the online community and feeling like they're not just a person sitting behind a computer for their class. They have people there with them experiencing the same thing. So it's really helpful to have all of this in Zoom. Security, we've been finding that that, you know, unfortunately, people are taking advantage of the situation and entering Zoom classrooms when they shouldn't be, doing inappropriate things. So keeping the right security settings for your Zoom room is really important. Starting in the fall, Zoom is going to require that you either have a password or a waiting room set up. I typically have a waiting room set up, and I took it down for today because we did have such a large room and participant list. But with a waiting room, you have to admit every person that tries to log on. And so it shows their name, and you can admit or you can deny them getting into your room. With the password, you have a password set in your Zoom account, and then you make sure to share that with your participants. Another feature with security is that you can then lock your room, your Zoom room, once all of the participants are in. You can lock it down so no one can enter it. But if a student does accidentally get kicked out for tech reasons, or, you know, whatever the circumstances are, they won't be able to get back in. So just keep that in mind. And then you can also limit sharing for your roles. Zoom is set up to allow all participants to share their screen. You may want to limit that depending upon your class and what you're having the students and participants do, but that is an option that you can limit that by their role. So some practical tips for engaging your students. Webcams, as we're, you know, experiencing right now, it's a great way to interact and have a more personalized experience. Especially with a larger class, you may want to have the students maybe come on with their webcams and then turn them off for bandwidth reasons, or, you know, depending upon what the situation is. But setting that precedent at the beginning for the students and what you're expecting of them is really important. So sharing that information before your Zoom classroom is probably the best way to go. And so they know that they have to have their webcam on. They're in an appropriate setting, that no one, or that's limited, and other people walking around that can be a distraction or for the class. So just some things to consider. You can adapt face-to-face activities that you have with your online classroom. You can either type in the chat pod, or let me see. It looks like, oh, Mary, it looks like you're asking about students' Zoom room. Let me see. Yes.
It's all right, Kelly. I've got
Okay,
the
you
chat
got it.
going. We're
Okay.
good. I'll stop you if I need you to.
Okay. Well, I just saw a private chat, so I just want to make sure.
Oh, okay.
And so adapting face-to-face activities. Are there activities that you have adapted so far? Because I know we kind of got thrown into online learning and out of the classroom pretty quickly. Were there activities that you were able to adapt, or are you're wanting to adapt and you're not really sure how to go about that? Go ahead and share in the chat pod. It might be helpful to hear some ideas about how others have gone about this, especially with so quickly needing to kind of think on their feet with and making adjustments as you go. I'll move on and you go ahead and type in the chat pod if you want to share any experiences you've had. But the breakout rooms are a great way to do that. Presentations, you can still have presentations.
Kelly, why don't you
Yes.
hang on one
Sure.
second? Somebody asked you to repeat the question. So I think
Okay.
what Kelly was asking is if you found certain kinds of activities that you did in March using WebEx or in this sort of this kind of a remote tool, would you mind sharing them with us? So if there's certain things that you thought worked really well in the spring using WebEx, or if those some of you did have Zoom, could you share that with everybody in the chat? Is that right, Kelly?
Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah, I know there's a disconnect with you know, just being on the screen and not being able to interact. So getting your students to interact is really important, getting them to participate and be just much of a presence in the classroom as you are, so they can really get into the discussions and share their ideas. Okay, breakout rooms.
Kelly, why don't you keep going, and we'll
Okay.
Andrea and I will get to we'll stop at
Okay.
a certain point when you're ready and get to some questions.
Okay, perfect. So you can also personalize the Zoom experience. I know it seems kind of limiting, very basic, but like Diane has the background. You can have like a PowerPoint presentation in the background as your backdrop that has the goals or the different activities that you're going to be doing during that Zoom session. You can have videos that are you can play for the students that they don't have to view on their own. You know, just a way to connect with them and create that community. You can have the guest speakers in, just as you would with an in-person class. You can have them join the Zoom classroom and still present as they would. So don't let being online try and limit what you can do. Just have to maybe adapt and and go with it. But just as you would in the classroom, you can also share relevant and current information. So you have your set topics, but you know, making sure you're relating to what's going on in the world, and because that's really helpful too for students, you know, to relate to and you know, use what's going on, what they're currently experiencing, and relate it to what's being discussed in class. I found that the students really kind of sometimes appreciate that they see you engaging with the technology. Don't try and be perfect. You know, just work with what you have. Go work with the technology together. It seems more authentic experience for everyone and the students, and you're building that community, learning together. And making the best of the technology and really engaging with one another. And as I mentioned with the backgrounds and everything, keeping the online space clean and easy to navigate. So don't have lots of pictures up in the background of your Zoom room. As you found, you know, with that the Zoom and the different webcams up, that was distracting behind the presentation when I didn't have it in full screen. So keep those things in mind so the students can focus on anything that you're sharing that you want them to interact with. Okay, so now using Zoom with the students. So now we're going to get into the fun stuff. So this is the second part where we actually get into the different features of using Zoom. So we may end up just diving into Zoom and losing the presentation. So we're not clicking back and forth. So it's easy to really get in and really experience Zoom for what it is. So webcam, as we've all experienced, the webcam is one of the main features as you enter the Zoom classroom. As I mentioned before, setting the expectations for your students, if you want them to have their webcam on, if it's an option, especially with a larger class size, it may be beneficial to keep the webcams off for bandwidth reasons, but really using the webcams as your benefit to really engage the student with. If you have the webcams on, the students really get to kind of know one another and get a sense of a classroom. So you can change the different, let me see here. So you can have two different views. So this is the gallery view where you can see everybody and click through the different webcams and who has it on and what everyone's doing. And then you can also do the speaker view, which is at the top. So the last person that spoke would appear in the center. So if they are doing a presentation or you are giving a lecture, this might be the best route to have. So you can focus on the presenter and just have everyone else at the top. So you do have those two options. Reactions. So it's a little button at the bottom. I'm gonna go ahead and make this smaller so you can't see it, so we can focus on Zoom. And so a few of the nonverbal reactions, as a few of you are doing, it's this button at the bottom on the toolbar, and it's kind of limiting of, you know, the options that you do have. It's either clapping or thumbs up, but it's a way to check in with the students, make sure that they're following along. So it's very simple and very easy to do, but a way to engage with the students. Another one is the on the participant list. You can have them check in with that they understand, that they're following along. If they don't agree, if you're going too fast, too slow. So it's another way to check in with your students to make sure you're on the same page and that they're following you. So either asking questions, verbally asking them questions, or having them answer with those reactions, or so, and then as you see, there's a count. You can, how many are saying yes, and someone did a thumbs up. So it's a great way to check in with the students, and you can clear it out. If you need to take a break and you want the students to kind of come back in 15 minutes, you can put the little coffee cup up and, or say that you're away, and you'll see that it also shows up here as a notification if someone does that, does a reaction or something in the participant list. So it's a great way to really engage with the students. Next is the whiteboard. Just as with you have in a in-person class, you have a whiteboard that may be a little bit older, at least kind of like a chalkboard or a whiteboard. You have that in your Zoom classroom. So it's just literally a whiteboard. So I'm going to go ahead and change what I'm sharing. I think I have to do a stop sharing and share something new. So I'm going to, you access the whiteboard by sharing your screen, and it's one of the options that is pulls up when you go to click on that button. So you click whiteboard and share, and so you should see the whiteboard, and you'll click on, if you want everyone to participate in the whiteboard, is definitely an option. You just click on the three buttons at the top, and let me see. And you should be able to participate and click in on the whiteboard and draw. And so everyone could take notes, you can type. So it's a great way to interact, and you can save then the whiteboard once you're done. So it's just a fun little tool that you can use with your students. And you can clear out everybody's participation on the whiteboard. You can clear out, you can save your own, and then you can save the whole thing. So it's a great little tool.
Kelly, a quick
Yes.
question. Somebody asked if you were using a stylus on your whiteboard. What are you writing with?
I just have my mouse and I click this draw button, and so I'm just using my mouse to draw.
Kelly, there was a question. Could you show us how to get the whiteboard again?
Sure.
Do you mind showing that again?
Yes, I can definitely do that.
And
So-
also, we're not able to edit the whiteboard. Are you able to show how to enable participants to edit the whiteboard?
I'm not sure if you have the option to clear it out. I know I have the ability to clear all drawings or my drawings or the viewer's drawings, but it looks like someone did because I didn't erase anything.
Hi, yeah, I did that. If you go at
Okay.
the top of this of your screen, it says, if you put your mouse up at the very top, it says you are viewing Kelly Ball's screen. It says view options. You can go and there's annotate, and a bunch of stuff shows up that you can use.
Thank you.
Now everybody's found it.
Yes. So it's a fun tool. Yeah. So you go through when you click on the button to okay, I'm gonna just warn you, I'm gonna shut this down so I can go through the process of how to create the whiteboard. So when you go to share, I won't be able to share it because I have to stop sharing. So you click on the button to share at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and you can choose to select your different screens of PowerPoint, and then another option is whiteboard. So it's just in one of your sharing options.
So it's in the little green button
Yeah.
at the bottom that says share screen with the up arrow.
Yeah. So I don't know if you can see it. I'm trying to. I clicked on new share, and whiteboard is one of the options right here. So hopefully you were able to see that. And that's the same thing as if you clicked on the share button at the bottom. Okay. So along the same lines, you can also annotate on top of something that's on the screen. So if you want to go through an article with the students or like a video, you can all take notes on the actual screen and not actually change the article. So I'm going to clear out the whiteboard. There we go. And I'm going to pull up this. Actually, no, I need to share first. And I'm going to share my screen. And then pull this up. And then there is an annotate button at the top that I have the ability to click on. And so you click on annotate. And just as you were with the whiteboard, you go through the same process of participating, and just someone put heart stickers on there. So you're drawing on top of the presentation or article, but you're not actually affecting it. So it's a great way to take notes and all together on one document. You can save it just as you did with the whiteboard and not actually change the original document. Okay. Yes, I can see that text. So I really like this feature. It doesn't seem like much, but if you have an article or something to go through with the students, it's really neat and you know, a great way to take notes all together. Okay. Next, we'll go through the polling. Sorry, I had to shut that down for you. So polling, you have to access the polls originally from your Zoom account online. So you have to make sure to go to your Zoom account and let me see, your meetings and personal meeting room. So you have to go to this account to create the polls, and then you can deploy them within your Zoom room. And you can do this all in real time. You don't have to create them before you open your Zoom room. So yeah, make sure you're in your Zoom account, go to your meeting and your personal meeting room. At the bottom, you can create your polls. So you just click on the add button. And while it is limiting, you do have the option to poll the students. So it is a very specific type of question. You have to give a very specific answer.
Kelly, are you trying to show anybody how to set up the poll? Because they
Yes.
can't see it.
Yes, let me do that. Thank you. Okay, let me go through that process again. So go to your Zoom account and go into the meetings tab, and then personal meeting room. And all the way down at the bottom is the poll section. So I've not created any polls yet. So you want to click on add. Okay, I can slow down. So yes, go to uri-edu.zoom.us, and then you would log into your Rhode Island Zoom account. Go to meetings, and then your personal meeting room. At the very bottom is the poll section. So you want to click on add to create your polls. While I think the polls are very limiting in what you can do with the students and what you're asking because of the type of question that's required, it is a great option to engage with your students. And if you want to get something more detailed and ask the students more questions or have them type out a response, there are different polling options and programs that you can use. But it's a great way to engage your students, especially maybe coming into the Zoom classroom. You can have the poll up and have them start participating. So you would type in your question here. Water, tea, coffee. So you would just type in the options that you want the students to choose from, and then you would just click save. And so at the bottom, it'll say the poll 1. If you gave it a title, it will be there. So so this is where it comes to where it's important to use your personal meeting room whenever meeting with your students, if you want to use the same polls. So this poll will only live in your personal meeting room and not any other meeting space that you create. And so then you can go into your Zoom room and you have the option for polling at the bottom. So you click on poll, and it'll bring up the different polls. Since I only have one, it just gives me this option, and then I just click launch poll. And so everyone should have the option now to participate, and you can, on my end, you can see where everyone is at and how many people have participated. Previously, I'm not sure if Zoom has changed it since we've last tested it out, but if you have not joined the Zoom classroom from the desktop application and just from the browser, you may not be able to participate. And then, so you might ask the students to type in the chat pod with their preference. So just keep that in mind. Or if that, you can't provide all of the options, of course, with when answering, so they can also use the chat pod as an option. So when everyone's answered, you can then click end poll, and it'll show the results. And then I can actually share the results with everybody. So you should be able to see the results on your own screen as far as who answered what, not necessarily who, but how many people answered what option. Okay. So again, polling is down at the bottom, and you go into your Zoom account online to create the different poll questions. And then one of the last features that we've spoken about is the chat pod. So you open the chat pod by clicking on this button, and along with the participant list. So this is the participant list, and typically the chat button then fills in underneath it. So I have separated it just so I can keep an eye on it on a different screen. So when I'm sharing my screen, I can see both. So I'm going to go ahead and merge it just so you see what it originally looks like. So if you want to have both open, so you can keep an eye on the participants and on the chat pod, it will live all in your Zoom screen. If you are sharing your screen and you do have multiple screens, or you can move the chat pod around, you do have that option. It's really nice. You can place the chat pod wherever you want to on your screen. You can resize it. So I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So this little caret button at the top of the chat pod, you want to click on that and click on pop out. So there we go. So that way you can make it as big or small as you want to. You can have it wherever you need to keep an eye on it. And so you can move it around and place it wherever best suits your Zoom classroom. A great option, as I previously mentioned at the beginning of the training, is that you can share files right in Zoom. So you just click on the file button, and you can share the files. They even have more options from what they started with. So it's nice that they have all of these set up, so you can share right from there. So I'm going to share a file with you of something I created. Desktop. So I created an infographic about the 5 cool features of Zoom for you. So it's just a nice little thing to have a takeaway and to share the file feature with you. And those are the basics of Zoom. So you are with the chat pod. And as many of you have discovered, you can chat with everybody, or you can have private chats, and you can adjust those chat options in your settings of your Zoom account. So if you don't want the students privately messaging one another, you can turn that off, but it does stop that from privately messaging you, the instructor. Okay, so that's a lot of the basic tools. Any questions before I move forward?
Kelly, let me ask a question that
Sure.
has sort of come up here, and that is that the chat, one of the things we know is that you can't do 2 things at once. There's no such thing. So we've been having a very, very active chat, but if we're looking at the chat, then we're not clearly paying attention to you, and that's true of your students as well. Mm-hmm. So have you, or maybe other people have some thoughts about, are there times when you don't want students chatting at all? You just turn off the chat? Can you do that? Yes. Are there times when you want, you just want to say, please, nobody's chatting? Just how do you deal with that 2 things happening at the same time, both of which could be important? And in fact, a lot of interesting things have been happening on the chat, mm-hmm. which if we're focused on you, we might have missed. So thoughts on that?
You do have the option to turn off the chat pod. It's in the security. You should be able to see me walk through it. It looks like I'm still sharing my screen. So you click on the security button, and here are the options. So you can allow the participants to chat or not chat. So you can turn that off. I don't want to turn off just in case it might clear anything out. But here are the options that you do have. So I turned off the sharing the screen. So that's something definitely to consider. Renaming yourself, just so you come in with somebody else's name or someone else's account. You can rename yourself. You allow the students to unmute themselves. But with the chat pod, that's tricky because some students maybe can't speak whether it's a limitation, something that's, they physically can't do, or that, they are in an environment that they cannot speak clearly, or have a lot of just background noise. So I think the chat pod is really something that you should consider having on, but I can understand that it can be a distraction. So maybe changing, turning it off if you want someone to present, and then turning it on if after they're presenting, so they're making sure that they're focusing. But I think that's with anything that you're online, they can always pull up a different screen and get distracted. So I think there's only, there's certain things you can limit, and then hope for that they're paying attention. Does that
Thanks.
help, Diane?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I do think it's just something to be thoughtful about. That was
Yeah.
and somebody asked the question, if you're teaching a face-to-face class and you're have remote students that are on Zoom, you now have many things to manage. And so it's something to think carefully about. And if you're presenting and you have chat, then you want to think, I think, carefully about how you're going to manage both of those. And in large classes, it may make sense to have help doing that.
Oh, yes.
Because it is hard to focus on two things at once, as we've just said, or have a time when you clearly figure out, I'm going to stop after 10 minutes and do X. But it's just a need to be very careful and thoughtful about how you use the time. So if you're doing a 5-minute lecture, you may turn off the chat for that 5 minutes just so folks focus, and then open the chat up for questions and thoughts and summaries or whatever. I guess that was my point.
Okay. So it looks like we have 10 minutes left. So I want to make sure to cover the breakout rooms, because I know that is something that everyone is probably interested in and testing out. So we're going to dive into that. We've already kind of covered screen sharing and the different options. So you do have the whiteboard, and you can share videos right in your Zoom screen. So now we're going to jump into.
Kelly, before you jump into breakout rooms, there's been a lot of questions about sharing audio when you are sharing a video. Can you quickly, because that's a pretty quick one.
Okay. Yeah. To share, make sure you share audio. You can do it two ways. You can do it when you're sharing your screen. Let's see. Hopefully you can see it. Are you able to see it, Andrea?
Yes. So it's that box.
So it's this box right here that you want to make sure you select. If you do forget to select it, and you're after you've shared your screen, you do have the option at the top. There is a toolbar that allows you to have a few different options, and one of them is to share your computer sound. So that is definitely something you're going to need to click and select if you are going to play a video. That way they can hear it right from your computer and don't have to leave Zoom to view the video. Okay. Is that what you're wanting, Andrea?
Yeah, that's exactly what they needed. Thanks.
Perfect. Okay. Now breakout rooms. So breakout rooms is at the bottom of your main toolbar in Zoom. And you have a variety of options when creating breakout rooms. One thing to keep in mind is that some students may not be able to go into breakout rooms because of their computer, or using like a library computer or something like maybe a military base. It can be limiting. So you can use the main Zoom room as one of the breakout rooms for those students that are not physically able to get into one of the breakout rooms. So you would click breakout room, and it'll tell you how many participants you have. It'll suggest the number of rooms you have. It does then give you the choice if to automatically put them into the rooms, or if you want to place them into the rooms because of maybe the topics that you want them to cover, or alphabetical, it's up to you, but you do have the option. And so then it'll tell you how many participants will be in each room. So if you want them to be bigger rooms, you can adjust the size, the number. And I'll show you the process of if you want to do that manually, how we can go about that. So I'm going to click on manual and click on the create breakout rooms button. So it'll bring out every single room, and then you can assign every student or participant to that room. You can always rename the room according to the topic, or you know, group A, group B, that type of thing. But you do have the option, if you find you have too many rooms, you can always delete the room. You can create assign rooms beforehand within your Zoom account, but it is difficult, and the students and participants have to sign in a specific way and make sure that they're logged into their account for it all to work correctly. So it is not an easy task to set it up beforehand. So this might be your best option, especially if you have students that can join from everywhere and using different types of devices to log on to your Zoom room. So now assigning the different rooms. So you click on the button assign, and it'll list everybody that has logged into the Zoom room, and you can start clicking and assigning the different students or participants to the different rooms. So because there's such a large number, I'm not going to go through this process, but I wanted to make sure to walk you through it so you saw what is required to do that. You can recreate the rooms and number. It gives you the option how many, if you reconsider how many rooms you want, you can go to that. There are options that before you create and put everybody into the breakout rooms and they kind of go off on their own, some things to decide on. If you want to move them, to change your mind and move them automatically. If you want the students to jump out of their breakout rooms at any time, or if you want them stuck in there and you decide when they leave, you can select here, the box here, to have the room close after a certain amount of time. So if you want to just give them 15 minutes to work, you do have that option. It'll shut down on them, and you can do a countdown as well. So they're not just kind of thrown out of it. It does give them a minute warning. It'll pop up on their screen. And so it's not so jarring. So I'm going to go ahead and get out of this. And we're going to move all participants into breakout rooms automatically. And so I'm going to move you, I'm going to click this button now, and it'll ask you to jump into the breakout room. Just test it out for a quick second, and because we don't have a lot of time, and just come back into the main room after you kind of see what it's like to be in a breakout room. Okay, so I'm going to click it now. Okay, so let's. Okay. Okay, so it looks like everyone's coming back. Okay, we still have about a third in the breakout rooms. I'm going to go ahead and close the rooms now. And before I move on, I want to wait till most of the participants are back. Okay, we're almost there. Okay, we're getting there. So with the one thing to keep in mind is that you do have a running chat pod with the main room, and that is the same chat pod that goes with you to the breakout room. And you'll notice that you'll just see the chat for your individual breakout room, and then it'll come with you when you come back to the main room. But you don't, if there's anything occurring in the chat pod when you left to go to the breakout room, you won't see any of that. It's as if the chat pod went with you and you came back. So don't share anything in the chat pod in the main room that you don't want the students to see, because they will not see it if they are in the breakout room. And that's the same thing to keep in mind. Don't put anything in the chat pod before the students enter your Zoom room, because they won't see it. They only see anything after they've come into the Zoom room.
Sorry, Kelly, we missed that. So what the chat in our breakout room was just for the 5 of us, correct?
Yes, it's the same chat pod, same chat that you started with in the main breakout room, and it follows you to your breakout room. You don't see anything that's happening in any other chat pod or any other breakout room, and anything that's happening in the main room you will not see. So anything that's been shared in the main room in the chat, you won't see. And so if the instructor has shared something while the breakout rooms are in session, you will need to share that again once the students are back in the main room.
Great, thanks.
Sure. Okay. I think everyone's back. So we're at 8 o'clock. Do we?
Kelly, there was
answer
one
questions?
question that seems to be getting a lot of attention too,
Sure.
and that was regarding, let's say you have weekly class meetings, what's the best way to share that? And do they have to set up a unique meeting for each week?
If you want to set up something that's reoccurring, that the students know exactly where to log into each week, I would say use your personal meeting room. And that, oh, we didn't get into the transcript feature of the recordings. So you want to go into your profile and make sure you set up your personal link. And this is what you would share with your students if you have a recurring meeting that you want them to know exactly where to log in each time and not have to look at the announcements or emails. They can just have this a recurring thing on their calendar. I would highly recommend using your personal link, personal meeting ID. It's for your meetings. And so that would be, if you go into your meetings tab and your personal meeting room, that would be what you would share with your students. That way you have all of your polls and have all of the same settings, rather than a meeting that you create on the spot, because it will be a different code.
Okay, so can I ask a question?
Sure.
We're actually set up to meet with our students Tuesdays, Thursdays at a certain time using Zoom. And is this how we would do it?
Yeah, you can create, through your personal meeting room, you can create the time and a calendar reminder for the students, so it would be on the calendar. So just make sure you have your personal meeting room connected and it's all linked up, and that when you create something, it's with your personal meeting room.
And would that automatically resend an invitation to the student on the morning of or the night before each class meeting to remind them that they've got a 9:30 class the next morning?
That I'm not sure about the reminders and how often those get sent out. that would be maybe something when you go through the details of setting up the meeting, and maybe a reoccurring reminder.
And then I'm one of the people who wanted to break my class up into groups that stay consistent throughout the semester. And each class period, probably during Zoom, will have them join their group in breakout sessions. So, and also we're doing all of this from within Brightspace.
Mm-hmm.
No.
So no, we're not, according to Joanna.
So
Well-
you can have your link in Brightspace, so they would, and that's how you would remind them. So in your to-do list, whenever it's on Tuesday and Thursday, you have that link, 9:30, this is where we're meeting. So they would click on the link to join from Brightspace, and it would take them to another window.
Okay.
And then that's when they would join your Zoom meeting.
I see. And can we set up the breakout groups in advance so that it's easy for them to just join their breakout group when I say during our Zoom meeting, join your breakout group now for 10 minutes to focus on this question?
Yes, you can. They have made that an option to set it up beforehand, but you have to let the students know they have to join in a specific way, that they have to log into their account beforehand. Because if they don't log in with their,
I thought I heard you say it was difficult.
it's not. It's not just like, yes, you click the students and it will move them as soon as they log in. You have to make sure that the students log in correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So when they log into Brightspace, then they also have to log into Zoom in a particular way in order to be able to participate in a breakout group.
They have to make sure that they sign into their Zoom account.
And so when they click on the link in Brightspace to join Zoom, they're not actually signed in. They have to then sign in.
Both Brightspace and Zoom use a single sign-on. So if they're in one, they will automatically be in another. So they will not have to sign in again. They'll already be in the single sign-on system.
Yeah, they just have to make sure that they go through and have everything up for Zoom, that they're logged in, that everything's up and running.
Ellie, there is a security question that I noticed in the chat that maybe we can address.
Okay.
It seems to be that maybe using the personal meeting room is a little more prone to things like Zoom bombing. So would you recommend maybe setting up a recurring meeting, but that has a specific link rather than using your personal room? Thank you.
Well, it's more predictable for the students, and so using the security options that are provided, like the waiting room or the password, I think are your best options.
So I know some people, Kelly is clearly willing to stay a little longer, but let me just say a couple of things. First of all, thank you, Kelly, enormously. Kelly, you might show people right now where they can save the chat pod, because there's a lot of interesting conversation that went on in the chat. And do you want to just show that? People can save it. There's a little right down here.
Yeah, there's the 3 buttons, and you have at the top, you have the option to save the chat.
So I would
So
suggest that.
So this popped up saying it'll show in Finder, or wherever you saved it. But in your Zoom settings, you designate where your saved files go. So whether it's on your desktop or in your documents, or downloads.
So just to say, I didn't know that when I saved my first chat, and when I went into, I have a Mac, when I went into my Finder, it just had a thing that said Zoom, and I found the chat in Zoom. So yes, there's a lot. Once again, we will record this. It will be available. The chat, please download it. Remember that ITS has help, and we'll be doing lots of workshops on how-tos. And also, when you set up your account, you'll see that Zoom has some very helpful videos as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if there were some additional questions, Andrea, that you wanted to.
Can I ask how to use the password? Because if you're using your personal Zoom room and you want to do it with a password, because I have too many students to admit everyone from the waiting room, I think. Would you put the password in Brightspace? And would you create a different password for every meeting? I don't understand how that would work. And how would the students know what the password is?
You can create the in your, let me see, I'm not sharing. There we go. So when you're in your Zoom account, you have the security options. So I have the waiting room set up, not the passcode. So if you do have the passcode set up, it'll have that there, and it will be included with the invitation of your Zoom meeting. You can choose to change it however so often. That's entirely up to you how often you want to change the passcode, but you do have the option to personalize it, and then it will be shared out with the invitation, and you can share it in Brightspace or in email, however you choose to.
So if you're setting up the meeting, if you're setting up all your meetings for the whole semester, would you have to set up a passcode for each meeting individually?
No, I think it would be the same passcode. So if you do change it after you send out the invitations, you might not.
Oh, so the passcode goes with the waiting. The passcode goes with the personal room. It doesn't go with the meeting.
I think it's with from what I've seen, it looks like it goes with the personal meeting or your meeting room. So if it gets changed after you send out the invitation, it might not change with it, or because the information's already been shared. It might have to update them on the passcode if it has been changed.
Kelly, can you record breakout rooms?
Yes, you can.
Because someone in the chat said that you can't. Can you show us how you would do that?
Yeah. So I'm gonna change so there's only 2 rooms, so it'll be a lot easier.
We came back. Were we supposed to?
Yeah,
You-
there were a lot of questions that were, I think, applicable to the whole group. So we wanted everyone to come back together.
Oh. We just had a great discussion. We just didn't know how long we were going to be there, though.
We saw 30 seconds to it officially kicks everybody out. But
Well, in whatever room we were in, group 2's back because we all decided to come back, I think.
So I think that that IT will be providing some technical Zoom workshops and drop-in sessions, and a lot of those should help us figure out how do we give recording permission to our students and that type of thing. We will look into that too, and when we send up information from this workshop, we will add whatever we do find in that. But this was a great start at engaging pedagogy for our students. So thank you, Kelly.
sure. I know someone wanted to see the transcript feature from the recording. So let me show that real quick, just in case they're still here. So you have the option to save either online on your account, or you can save it on the on your computer. So I can go to my, sorry for this quick scrolling. You can go to your recordings in your Zoom account on the left-hand side. So you have the cloud recordings or your local recordings. So I did a test recording yesterday, and this shows the one that's currently recording right now. So you can click this to open it, and you can download the files, or you can click to open up the video. And here's the video right here. It's only 23 seconds. And here's the transcript. So if you want to make sure, like, your students are meeting and you want to make sure that they've covered everything that they want to cover and hitting those keywords, you can search for those keywords. So you type in "when" and it'll highlight those words in the transcript. So it's nice for you as the instructor to keep an eye on those keywords when you're not in the meeting, or for the students that are not able to attend or need to have the transcript because they weren't able to catch all of the the words or need the captioning. So it's a nice option to have. So that's just the quick transcript to go along with the video.
So once again, Kelly, let me thank you. Let me thank all the participants. Let me remind folks that there are lots of features, and like any technology, start out with the easy pieces and then build up to it. And one of the things that we discussed in our group was this is in Zoom, I think, and just like in a face-to-face class, spend some time with your students setting ground rules, deciding what can happen in a breakout room. Are they going to be recorded? When is chat permissible, and and how to have good discussions in a way that that allows everyone to feel valued. So we will put the recording in our YouTube channel. We hope you look at our calendar. We have a few more great workshops coming up. And Kelly, I'll let you go get your second cup of coffee because I know it is only 8 o'clock your time.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.